Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Peter Kolar. I'm the editor for Spanish and bilingual resources for GIA Publications. A very special thank you to GIA for hosting this and for offering this session. We'll be here over the next hour or so, perhaps a little bit longer, exploring something that is very dear to me and something that I hope resonates with you in your own personal faith lives and as music ministers in communities who may be marking this particular occasion. That, of course, is the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which occurs within the Advent season. And for many of us, especially because of the pandemic, we're unable to gather in communal celebrations. Perhaps your parishes have not quite yet opened, or if they are opened, are only opened in limited capacity. So for that reason, I wanted to offer a session whereby we could perhaps unite ourselves, at least in the love for this particular occasion, love for our Mother Mary, and by looking specifically at a component of the Guadalupe celebrations, which is essential, and that is the music. It's also a part that has fascinated me for years and has formed me. I want to share a little bit of that enthusiasm and a little bit of my own yearning for discovering more and more about the Guadalupe repertoire. I lived for many years in Chicago, Illinois, before moving here to El Paso, Texas. And while I was in Chicago, I lived and ministered in a Mexican-American community called the Back of the Yards. These were the immigrant neighborhoods behind, geographically located behind the stockyards, where many immigrants came to find a way of life and employment. And the church that was centered in this neighborhood was Holy Cross Immaculate Heart of Mary Church. Holy Cross Church is the facade that is featured on Misa Luna, and indeed is the place where I composed that Mass setting. And one of the best things about my time there, looking back on it, were indeed the celebrations of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Guadalupe was a tremendous occasion in the life of this community, in many ways even larger and bigger than Christmas. Guadalupe began with a novena, and there were masses every night, and they were filled. And then the morning of December 12th at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, that 1,500 seat glorious, magnificent building was filled to capacity, overflowing with folks coming in for Las Mañanitas and celebrating that Mass before they went on to their workday. Then later that evening, we'd have a solemn Mass, a celebration, again, marking the solemnity, the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And it was with matachines and dancers and sights and sounds and wondrous music. Guadalupe, these celebrations in many ways, they left quite a mark on me personally. Certainly had quite to do with my own formation of faith. And from a musical and liturgy perspective, the music has always been a source of fascination for me, the music that's associated with this feast. So that's why I wanted to share a little bit with you on this particular topic so that you could dig in with me, explore, and then in the course of doing so, I will share some pastoral insights that I have developed over the years, share with you a little bit of wisdom of how you might apply it in your own celebrations. It's really kind of just an introductory walkthrough of this essential repertoire. We'll be looking at some pieces that are traditional, that are considered staples of the Guadalupe repertoire, and as well as some newer pieces that I think merit inclusion in your considerations for repertoire as you plan liturgies either for this year or in coming years. So with that in mind, let's dig in. I'm going to share repertoire using some resources as kind of the vehicle whereby which we can explore that. One of the ones I'll be using is this book right here, which is the Celebremos Hymnario. Hopefully the light is conducive to you able to see what's on the cover. This is a 3-year companion resource that has quite a bit of music, well over 600 titles, and it is meant as a companion to the missalette, many of which you use in your parishes. This is the bilingual missalette, Celebremos, Let Us Celebrate. It's the English and Spanish text of the Mass on facing pages, but it also, the missalette is published quarterly and also contains music. But because it's a quarterly resource 4 times a year, GIA WLP now offers this hymnal that stays in the pew for 3 years, and it offers some stability for your repertoire. So we'll be using the repertoire that's in there, and I'll be showing you the music from the accompaniment volume. This is the 3rd of the 3-volume set of accompaniments that contain the music for these resources. So I'm very proud of those, and I think they will serve your community very well. So if you haven't already explored those fine resources and their contents, be sure to check them out. You can ask for a free sample copy from GIA directly through their customer service, or go on their web, giamusic.com. Now, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to see a little bit of what I'm talking about. This is the title page for the hymnario, and I'm going to jump ahead to the section that contains the Guadalupe pieces. The hymnario has repertoire in English and Spanish, and bilingual repertoire, of course. And so here within the Spanish bilingual section, which is marked by these thumb bars on the side, you'll see a variety of repertoire available to your community. Amongst them, these are some of the pieces we're going to discover and explore. Some ones that you're already familiar with, some ones that are new. Here's a setting, a bilingual setting of the Immaculate Mary, an Ave Maria. Here's well-known pieces in the repertoire, and then some Guadalupe specific ones. Just a little browse through here. We're going to go into these in detail one by one. So with that in mind, I'm going to switch over now to a PDF that shows the accompaniment versions, and we're going to use this kind of as our guide going through. I have here with me my keyboard, if you can see a little bit of this, so I'll play a few of the tunes for you. I also have my iPod so that you can hear some recorded samples from various already existing recordings. This is going to be a lot of fun, so stay with me as we go through this. I'm very excited for what we're going to explore here. So let's start with the first piece that was in the Pew Book, and this is just a setting of Immaculate Mary. So you know the Lourdes hymn quite well. I'm sure it's well known in your communities, and know also that in the Hispanic community it's fairly well known as well. Here is the English text, Immaculate Mary and the Aves. And then note that there's a very fine translation here. Del cielo ha bajado la Madre de Dios, cantemos el ave a su concepción, and then the ave refrain. Now, when we do the refrain, you most likely start the ave on the downbeat. Ave, ave, ave Maria. But just take note that there also is the possibility that some communities may know it with a pickup note. So the possibility of singing it like this, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave Maria. Is a potential way it can be done. So if you're going to use this particular hymn tune, just make sure that you check first in with the community or other choirs who may be doing it to see what is their standard or preferred way of doing it. You have many verses here at your disposal, and so this makes a fine entrance or gathering tune. You can also do it at other times of the Mass. Again, the bilingual nature of it gives you plenty of option. You could do it as a set of English verses and then switch to Spanish, or you could do a toggling back and forth between the verses, one, or some other design that works very well for you. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not necessarily a Guadalupe specific piece, but it is a Marian piece that is somewhat universal and can be considered for these celebrations. Now, let's talk about Las Mañanitas. Las Mañanitas is a very important aspect, part of Guadalupe. Part of the tradition is that Las Mañanitas are sung. Now, Mañanitas literally means the little mornings. It's the diminutive of la mañana, las mañanitas. And it's the way of kind of having the community or loved ones come to serenade and wake up your loved one. In this case, Mother Mary, the Virgin of Guadalupe, is the one we're serenading early in the morning. And we're bringing her gifts and music and rejoicing and expressing our profuse love for her. That's all part of the characteristic nature of Las Mañanitas. Now, when we're talking about the melody and the music itself, Las Mañanitas has two distinct tunes with it, with that name associated with it. The first is Las Mañanitas Guadalupanas, which is a slow waltz, and the melody is Despierta, madre, despierta, mira que ya amaneció, ya los pajarillos cantan, la luna ya se metió. Basically says, wake up, mother, wake up. It's already the dawn of the day. The birds are now singing and the moon has gone to rest. It's now hidden from view because it's daylight. And so let's talk a little bit more about this. There's lots to explore with this piece. It's simple. It's 1-4-5 harmonies. There's not much to it, and yet it says so much and it speaks so much to the cultural importance of Guadalupe. The melody, as with many Latin American melodies, is very simple. And because of the way it's constructed, it begs, it invites automatically a harmony to be joined with it. This harmony in Spanish is called segunda voz, or the second voice. So this would be the second voice that's added in the texture. And the understanding is that it would be sung at the interval of a third or a sixth, depending on the range and voice. So you take this, all of a sudden becomes... And so that's how the voice functions. It's also how, if you were to have instrumentation, that's how the trumpets would be. With ornamentation and other kind of flair to it. But that tracking of a melody with a harmony on top of it is very much part of how these melodies function and are constructed. The verses go through several it cycles through several iterations of expressing how much we love Mother Mary, and each time it ends in this refrain, wake up, Mary, we love you. Now, it's important that to understand a few things about these tunes. One is that they're traditional, they're handed down orally. And so what you see here on the page in front of you is simply one rendering by someone who heard it and notated it, transcribed it. But be prepared for lots of variations in the chords that might be applied, or how people do it, or the strumming and the rhythms, and especially the key. It's important to know that, and as a music minister, be prepared to know this melody in many different keys. It works very well in D. Or you might want to do it in E, which is a very guitar-friendly key. As is G and A, a little bit higher voices if you have a tenor singing it. I like it in F, although it's not the most guitar friendliest key. It works very well for the assembly. You can have your guitarist's capo on 3 and play D chords, and then they could achieve this pitch very nicely. And as far as the range is concerned for the assembly, it works very well. Vocal-wise, the lower voice works very well for women, and tenors could be the upper voice, which is indicated here in the Q harmonies. And that, of course, gives you an instant harmony with it. So this is a staple of the repertoire. It's usually sung with mariachi. It can be the entrance hymn for a long procession. You see you have many verses that you can cycle through. This refrain could be used as a little interlude interspersed between there. So there's a lot of options with it. So Las Mañanitas Guadalupanas, an essential staple of the repertoire, the slow waltz, the waltz version of it. Now, Guadalupanas version of Las Mañanitas is often coupled with this next one, which is the Tapatías version, Las Mañanitas Tapatías. This is the quicker waltz. This is more like a valse ranchero, a ranchero waltz. And this is the version that says, Que linda está la mañana. Now what happens is typically these two versions are coupled together. Now we have the Guadalupe specific texts here, but it's important to know that in popular culture, celebrations throughout the year, family celebrations throughout the year, are often marked by the singing of Las Mañanitas. And it's done so by coupling a verse of the Guadalupana version with a verse of the Tapatías version, kind of in a medley. So you start with the slow, and then you switch to the, and that's a version that would be sung. We'll talk a little bit more about that because I have a version specifically to show you of that medleyed. But as far as the Guadalupe specific version of Las Mañanitas is concerned, there's a couple things to note with this. As with the Guadalupana version, you have a simple melody, 1-4-5 structure in the harmony. This melody is also inviting of a segunda voz. This is the second voice that would be added in harmony. And so very naturally you could have the tenors sing it, or depending on range, it could be a sixth below, or whatever works best for your voicings in your group. Now, the verse of the Tapatías version of Las Mañanitas is essentially 4 phrases. Que linda está la mañana en que vengo a saludarte. Next phrase. Venimos todos con gusto y placer a felicitarte. The third phrase. El día que tú naciste, nacieron todas las flores. And the last phrase. Y en la pila del bautismo cantaron los ruiseñores. Now, each of these phrases at their connection point, here you see that as it's notated, it simply just plows through into the next phrase. But what is more customary for this when it's done in performance is for measures to be added here so that that phrase is extended. And that would be where the trumpets would intersperse a little lick or a little trill, little filler in for as part of it. So be prepared as you do this, not to just stick to the notation, but to realize that these songs are flexible in nature. So more likely it would be done. Linda está la mañana en que vengo a saludarte. Venimos todos con gusto y placer a felicitarte. So I'm adding 2 measures for each of those little transition points. So be mindful of that. Now, when we get to the refrain, if you're going to go on to additional verses, I have 3 here, but there's even more out there that may be discovered. But here's notated 3 versions of this version. And you wouldn't necessarily need to observe these fermatas. So you do the refrain kind of like this. Ya viene amaneciendo, ya la luz del día nos dio. Levántate, virgencita, mira que ya amaneció. Add in an interlude if you want. And then back into additional verses. Now the fermatas would be reserved for the end of the piece. So if this were the ending of the piece, then you would observe these fermatas, and they're very dramatic in terms of their pause. Ya viene amaneciendo, ya la luz del día nos dio. Levántate de mañana, mira que ya amaneció. And a tenor would go up the scale, or a high voice, mira que ya amaneció, kind of nice with bravado. And then you end the piece musically with the tan tan. This is the mariachi scale that finishes up a ranchero waltz. 5-1. And that's the expectation for how you would conclude a waltz. So lots to discuss even in these very simple traditional pieces that are done all the time, but to dig into them, if I were a musicologist, I would explore even more of the history and read up on the origins of melodies. But one thing is for sure, that these have developed over time, and the way that they're used now in popular culture is just that very way that I explained. A verse of the Guadalupana's version, coupled with Las Tapatías and somewhat of a medley, is the typical song that you would sing, kind of the equivalent of Happy Birthday. And you would sing this at family celebrations, or Mother's Day, or Father's Day, or for anniversaries, anything like that. So I'd like to just take a little detour here from our accompaniment versions and the hymnal and show you an arrangement of Las Mañanitas done by yours truly. And this is a version of Las Mañanitas that takes the coupled version, the slow waltz and the fast waltz. And what I've done here in this version, available through GIA, here's the octavo number if you're interested in ordering it, is I've added a completely singable and poetic English translation all the way throughout. So this profuse imagery of singing and flowers and birds singing, and the baptismal font and flowers blooming, all that kind of stuff is encapsulated in the translation that I've done here. And as you can see, there's now a full choral rendering in SATB harmonies. So for those choirs who want to take on the challenge of something a little more chorally advanced, the part writing in this is a lot of fun. There is little inter-voicings and hemiolas and counterpoint that enter in. So regardless of the language that you sing it in, your vocalists, your singers will have a lot of fun with this. And then note also that I've arranged it in terms of instrumentation for trumpets, for violins, and I've even added a notated guitarrón bass guitar part. So part of the charm of the mariachi or ranchero waltz is that the bass player doesn't just stick to a pattern that's simple, but oftentimes adds hemiolas. Adds in these hemiolas quite naturally and somewhat randomly, but that's part of the charm of the style. So if that's not something that your player is necessarily familiar with or able to do in an improvised manner, you have all the notation here, the trumpet parts offered in B flat and for C trumpets, the violins, and the very thing I was talking about, here's the bass part. So you have a chart that authentically renders the style of bass playing for what would typically be a guitarrón, which is the large onion-shaped bass guitar that a mariachi uses, or simply a bass guitar. And in doing so, with this type of instrumentation, you'd render a wonderful kind of synopsis of what the mariachi essence is: the trumpets and the violins and the bass, and add to it a guitar on its strum, and you can really have a lot of fun. So do check out this arrangement of Las Mañanitas, available at giamusic.com, or call our customer service. You can check out these and some of the other octavos that I'm going to show later. Okay, let's go back now and let's carry on with continuation of our repertoire that we're exploring. Next up is Buenos Dias, Paloma Blanca. And Buenos Dias, Paloma Blanca, again, a traditional piece. Don't know the origins or the author, an anonymous person, but this melody has been handed down to us as part of the Guadalupe repertoire. Again, it's a mariachi waltz in a quick tempo. It begins with this introduction, which is the same as the ending of the melody. There's multiple verses of it. Again, you have a melody that's constructed in such a way that it invites an upper harmony. And again, you should be prepared as music leader or music minister or accompanist to do this in various keys: D major, E major, G, A, or as it is here notated in F. You have an introduction, which of course lends itself to brass. That kind of thing would be something that the trumpets would do, accompanied by violins. And you have a song that basically says, "Good morning, white dove. We're here to greet you and we love you on this special day." So it's pertinent to Las Mañanitas. It's pertinent to the morning. But if you're temporarily concerned about perhaps programming this in the evening and how that might juxtapose with a morning song being sung in the evening, I would allay your fears. This is such a staple of the repertoire that it's just expected to be sung sometime on the day. So even if your celebration happens to be later in the evening, and you don't have to change it to Buenas tardes, Paloma Blanca. Buenos dias is perfectly fine and what is expected as part of the song. Buenos dias, Paloma Blanca, hoy te vengo a saludar. Repeat. Saludando tu belleza en tu trono celestial. Eres madre del Creador, que a mi corazón encantas. Gracias te doy con amor. Buenos días, Paloma Blanca. You can do an interlude. And then going on to the additional verses. And then at the ending, Buenos días, Paloma Blanca. Do the tan-tan ending to end it. And you can see it notated here if you were to do this interlude as an outro. But you have the scale going up, the 5/1 to end the piece, and that's very much part of it. So you can envision mariachis perhaps marching in or accompanying the celebrations, and oftentimes they will stop in front of an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe and then continue the serenade. This is what a lot of communities might do. And so you would hear and sing Las Mañanitas, the two different versions. You might even then the mariachi or the musicians might go into Buenos Dias, Paloma Blanca, or they might be done individually. It's all out there depending on your pastoral need. But it's important to know the repertoire, and I think it's so lovely. It's something I get very excited about, obviously. So that's Buenos Dias, Paloma Blanca. Let's move on. I want to show you next, not a melody or a tune, but a text. This is a text called Elevamos Nuestros Cantos. And this is a tune, you can see at the very bottom here, by Jose Antonio Rubio. He's a composer and a text writer. If you minister in Hispanic communities, you might be familiar with the tune, Que mi oración sube hacia ti, Señor, como incienso ante tu altar. Very beautiful, charming waltz based on Psalm 141, well known in the community. Jose is the author of that piece. So years back, he authored this particular text, and this is a text that I think you'll find quite useful. Now, it's set to 8787D as its meter. That means that's a counting of the syllables. 87 means 8 syllables followed by 7-syllable phrase. For the next musical phrase as well, and then the D means it's doubled. So each phrase is Elevamos nuestros cantos, 8, a Jesus el Salvador, 7, and each musical phrase has 8, 7, 8, 7, and it's doubled. So you have 4 total phrases of this. And as such, there's many melodies that accommodate this particular meter, this poetic meter. The one that we used here in notation is Hymn to Joy, the very well-known tune by Beethoven. And the reason it's coupled with this particular tune is because Hymn to Joy is well known in the Hispanic community. So even though this text might be something new uh, for El Pueblo, the fact that they know the melody already gives them kind of a leg up in feeling like this song is something they already know. So let's look at this text and what it says. I love the way it's constructed. It's 4 stanzas. The first one says, elevamos nuestros cantos a Jesús el Salvador, verbo eterno hecho carne en el seno virginal. So this is the word made flesh in the Virgin's womb. Él es hijo de María, virgen pura sin igual. He is the son of Mary, a virgin without stain. And hijo del eterno Padre, él es nuestro redentor, son of the eternal Father, he is our Savior. So it's very Christ-centric in establishing what the tune and what our celebrations are about. Then it goes into, in the second and third verse, exploring a little bit more about Mary's role. And by the third verse, it specifically names her role as Guadalupe and her visitation to Juan Diego, and her appearance to ask for a sanctuary be built on the hill of Tepeyac. And in this phrase right here, en su tilma, su imagen en la tilma, a su pueblo le dejó, leaving the image of herself on his cloak as a gift for the ages to the church, to her son's fold. The word that's used here is gray, the flock. So you could sing this to many different melodies for purposes of this tune. I mean, let me put on an organ sound. Elevamos nuestros cantos a Jesús el Salvador, verbo eterno hecho carne en el seno virginal. And going on. Let's look at the next stanza because this is the one that's our exciting. Y María es su madre desde el ave de Gabriel. Ella fue quien lo cuidaba, Virgen Madre siempre fiel. En Belén y en Egipto, ella estaba con Jesús. Ella estaba en el Calvario, a su lado en la cruz. This verse is explaining how Mary is Christ's mother, but accompanied him throughout all his ministry and life in Bethlehem, in Egypt, and at the foot of the cross on Calvary. And then finally, let's just look at verse 3. Desde entonces ella ha sido madre de su grey también, y por eso desde el cielo hasta el Tepeyac bajó. A Juan Diego en el cielo un santuario le hizo, y su imagen en la tilma a su pueblo le dejó. If you're celebrating a novena, this would be a perfect song to program every night, and you could do it to different tunes or in different parts of the Mass. You could do it as an entrance, you could do it as a preparation of gifts or communion or as a closing. And because it's 8/7/8/7D, there's many melodies you could do to it. You could potentially sing it like this. Elevamos nuestros cantos a Jesús el Salvador. Él es hijo de María, virgen puro sin igual. That's Pleading Savior is the name of that tune, which, because we know it as Sing to Mary or Sing of Mary, it already kind of has a Marian nature to it. You could sing it to Nettleton. Elevamos nuestros cantos a Jesús el Salvador. Or perhaps Beach Spring for more gentler character. Elevamos nuestros cantos a Jesús el Salvador. Él es hijo de María. Like that. So some different options for you because it's very versatile in the way it's constructed. So thank you, Jose Rubio, for that wondrous gift, this gift of a great text, a Guadalupe specific text that is Christ-centric, but celebrates and honors Mary's role in all of this. this in our faith especially. Moving on. Now let's talk a little bit about psalmody. As you're planning psalmody, you're most likely going to look to the lectionary, pick the readings for it. This is the daily lectionary in which the Feast of Guadalupe is found. You'll see that the rubric is that you can pick any reading from the Common of the Blessed Virgin Mary. In addition to that, it gives for December 12th a few specific options. You're free to use any of them. But if you go with the ones that are prescribed here, you'll see that it has a Zechariah first reading or a Revelation as one of the two options. For the Psalm, it has the Canticle of Judith. There is no second reading because it's a feast. And then it has the Gospel of Luke, where it has the Magnificat, two different options for that. Now, that's all fine and good, but it's important to realize that in the United States, there is no Spanish language lectionary. And so Spanish-speaking communities likely are using a lectionary from another country because we don't have one of our own yet here in the United States. So whether that's a lectionary from Spain or a South American country, or most likely from Mexico. So here's the Mexican lectionary. This is the one that's published by Buena Prensa. And within the Mexican lectionary, you'll have to understand some liturgical differences. Guadalupe is not designated as a feast in Mexico, but actually a solemnity. And so there's prescribed readings. They're not just chosen from a common, but there's prescribed readings for the day. And as a solemnity, it has a second reading as well. And so you're going to come across kind of these juxtapositions of how the United States treats this feast versus how Mexico treats this feast in terms of how you plan when it comes to the liturgical texts. So just bear that in mind. In the Missalette, we print a second reading because many places are going to expect it. Certainly those who are used to proclamation of the word from the Mexican lectionary as their regular lectionary are going to see it right in front of them. So we have that option in there, although it's designated as it could be omitted, it's optional. But just note that there is some disparity in how those texts align in terms of how the church has chosen them for us and the options given to us. Let's go back to sharing the screen here. And I want to share with you an option of a musical setting for the Judith Canticle. And here is a melody and a version that's bilingual using the text, "Tú eres el orgullo de nuestra raza," you are the highest honor of our race. This is composed by su servidor, yours truly. This is a setting that I really enjoy. It's the Judith Canticle, and because it's Guadalupe and this festive occasion, it has some energy and rhythm behind it. And I'm going to play for you a recorded version of this with my friend Michelle Abeda singing. This is from the collection called Aclama Tierra Entera. This is a collection published by WP, available through GIA. And it's all the common psalms for the church year and all the psalms for the Easter Vigil. And each setting is bilingual. They're constructed bilingually. They were composed by bilingual composers. And so it's not a shoehorning of one language into another after the fact, but a construction of the piece from its incept so that it's rendered in a bilingual nature, and it gives due honor and dignity to both languages present. So with that in mind, you can find that collection, Aclama Tierra Entera, Sing All You Lands, at giamusic.com. And the entire collection is recorded. Let me just stop share for a quick minute. You have this 4-volume CD set of the entire contents of that book right here, Aclama Tierra Entera. So do take advantage of it. It's a really good resource, and there's a couple samples that I'm going to show you for this session. But when I do other sessions on common psalmody and psalmody in general, I have a lot of really good choices from that collection. Here is Michelle Abeda singing my setting of the Judith Canticle. Everyone. Tú eres el orgullo de nuestra raza, You are the highest honor of our race. Little interlude. And then it goes through the verses in a more calmer manner. So you get a sense of that. It's really, really an engaging setting. And when you go back into the refrain, it's a refrain that everyone can really buy into, because it's engaging and it has both languages well represented. Let's go on now to this option. So one of the options for the gospel is the Luke passage, whereby Mary proclaims her the Magnificat. The Magnificat is also one of the options in the canon of the Blessed Virgin Mary for the Psalm. So you could coordinate your selections accordingly. But if you were to choose an option, this is a version that I wanted to show you that's completely in Spanish. It's by Pedro Rubalcaba, and it's from his collection Hoy nos reunimos en nombre de Dios. This collection and recording is a body of work that he designed specifically for mariachi, and it contains the entire mass setting, including the Misa Ranchera, which is something you should check out and which is in the Celebremos accompaniments already. But as part of that, as part of the traditional Latin American concept of what a sung mass is, it includes the entrance hymn, the offertory, the psalm, the communion, in addition to all the ordinary. So it's this really complete body of work, and it's done all for mariachi groups. It has the violin and trumpet parts available, and it's rendered in these traditional mariachi styles. In this case, you'll see that this is a valse ranchero. And so the refrain is Proclama mi alma lo grande que es Dios, se alegra mi espíritu en mi Salvador. And I want to play a little bit of the recording. This is Pedro's recording, but he had a guest vocalist on it. This is Monica Trevino singing the lead part on this. So she's cantering. Here's a little bit of Canto de Maria by Pedro Rubalcaba. Just notice how lush and beautiful it is, especially with this instrumentation. Proclama mi alma lo grande que es Dios, se alegra mi espíritu en mi Salvador. Proclama mi alma lo grande que es Dios, se alegra mi espíritu en mi Salvador. Here you normally repeat it for the assembly, going on to the verses. So you can just get a sense of the very gentle nature of it. You know, it has this lilt, it has this waltz, this movement to it, but also this profound joy. My soul proclaims the glory of the Lord. So thank you, Pedro, for that. Be sure to check that out. Hoy nos reunimos is the name of the collection, but this Canto de Maria is already in Celebremos. The accompaniments all available. Now here is another setting of the Magnificat text. This one is bilingual, and it's by the late composer Eleazar Cortez. Tremendous gift to the church. Eleazar was just one of the, I think, most outstanding composers, in recent times. His sense for writing a melody for the assembly was just unparalleled. So this melody goes, El poderoso ha hecho grandes obras por mí, su nombre es santo. The Almighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. Now the beauty of it, this is a quick 3/4 time, and it's a wapango rhythm. You'd have a guitar that has a very aggressive type of strum and a bass that would toggle between 3/4 and sometimes 6/8. So there's some ambiguity into how the meter is treated, and that's the beauty of what a wapango is. So you can imagine. El poderoso ha hecho grandes obras por mí, su nombre es santo. The Almighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. So you can have great fun with this. It's a well-constructed melody. It has some syncopations in there to give a little bit of vibrancy to it. The verses would be sung by the psalmist, of course, but you have a bilingual refrain with both texts rendered within a single melody. Really, really well constructed. This is also in Aclama Tierra Entera. So the recording is available there, as is the notation in the Celebremos accompaniments. A very quick detour, word I would just want to speak specifically to keyboardists. Keyboardists, if you're watching this and you're wondering why am I playing this on the piano but I'm not using the keyboard accompaniment that's written. The reason being is that I encourage keyboardists, accompanists, pianists who are playing these particular tunes, of the Hispanic repertoire, to, as much as possible, move toward the facility whereby you can play from the lead sheet or the guitar edition without tying yourselves to a written keyboard accompaniment. Oftentimes I find it, and this is speaking as the person who actually writes the keyboard accompaniments, oftentimes I find them a hindrance because they sometimes tie us down to what's on the page. And recall that these pieces don't live on the page. They live on the voices and within the hearts of the people singing them. And as such, we have to go into them with a little bit of malleability, know that they're flexible. These pieces are not just set in stone or set in ink on the page. So as much as possible, keyboardists, if you're not necessarily comfortable with improvising or coming up with an accompaniment on the spot and do require the notes, by all means use those accompaniments, but use them as your stepping stone to try to perhaps explore more about these styles so that you can play a waltz or a polka or a wapango and understand how the style functions, and so that you can simply just apply some techniques from your toolbox, whether that's how a bass line functions or how the right hand would function, or the rhythm, and think more like a guitarist. And so that's one of the reasons I'm using these guitar specific versions to encourage that, even among keyboard players. All right, let's continue on with our repertoire tour. Las Apariciones Guadalupanas is an essential staple of the Guadalupe repertoire. It's known also by its first line, Desde el cielo una hermosa mañana, from the heavens a beautiful morning came. This is a polka. Oftentimes this is done by mariachi, so you can see the instrumentations that would be applied to it. But on a piano, it works very well with a guitar strum, with upstrokes. Again, with the other pieces, this has a simple melody that lends itself to an upper harmony or a segunda voz. It'd also be good to know this in several different keys. D major would be one of them, guitar friendly, as well as E or G and A. F happens to work very well for the assembly, so this is how it's notated. Desde el cielo una hermosa mañana, repeat, desde el cielo una hermosa mañana. La Guadalupana, la Guadalupana, la Guadalupana bajo el tepeyac. La Guadalupana, la Guadalupana, la Guadalupana bajo el tepeyac. Suplicante juntaba las manos, suplicante juntaba las manos. Y eran mexicanos, y eran mexicanos, y eran mexicanos su porte, su faz. Y eran mexicanos, y eran mexicanos, y eran mexicanos su porte, su faz. So you can see how that last section can also be used as an interlude that can be interspersed, perhaps with couplet verses or every group of 3 verses. Add a little bit of variety in there. A C trumpet can easily take that part, or a transposing B flat player could read that simply in those 2 voices. Violins could also play on some of the parts within the verses. So very easily you can render this in a mariachi sound, even with your choir. So adding the voices, of course, in harmony with women on the lower voice and perhaps tenors on the upper voice gives a wondrous effect. So a beautiful tune. Here are the 2 adios pieces. Let's look very quickly at them. These would typically be sung at the end of Mass. This is, we've begun the celebrations by singing Buenos Dias and Las Mañanitas, and we end them by saying Adios, a farewell to the Virgin of Guadalupe. Let's look first at Adios Reina del Cielo. Adios Reina del Cielo, Madre del Salvador. Adiós, oh Madre mía, adiós, 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 de tu divino rostro. It goes on. So that first line can be used as a refrain, or you can just simply sing it through strophically with the 8 stanzas in total. Again, bear in mind that these may be done different ways. This is a time of farewell, so it kind of has a little bit of longing or mourning to it. You might hear it done much slowly. Adiós, Reina del Cielo, Madre. So be prepared for some variations in the interpretation. Let's look at Adiós, O Virgen de Guadalupe, also one of my favorite tunes on the repertoire. So the notation doesn't give all the nuance of it. You could do it as a ballad and be quite fine with straight 8s. But I think what you don't get necessarily is a sense that it might also be done with a little bit of a lilt. Now here's how the fermatas function. Eres mi vida, eres mi vida, mi solo amor. Adiós, oh Virgen, Madre querida. So you could have some fun with how you interpret it and with your instrumentation, but violins could be a part of this. Again, it's in 2 voices. Like De Colores, it's kind of ambiguous which one is really the melody, but we've gone with the top voice as the one that seems to make sense in terms of its melodic structure. But they really function symbiotically, and both harmonies are quite expected and part and parcel to the tune. So those are your Adios pieces. Now, if you're looking for something perhaps a little more upbeat as a closer, as a closing hymn, I invite you to look at Mi Virgen Ranchera. This is a very popular piece in Mexico. It's by a Mexican composer from the golden era of Mexican popular music I'm going to guess the 40s and 50s. I may be wrong on that, but Chucho Monje is a composer of some of the most well-known tunes in popular Mexican music, mariachi and ranchero music. One of his most famous tunes is a piece called Mexico Lindo, also one of my favorite melodies ever. It's just wonderful. So in that kind of same spirit, Mi Virgen Ranchera was constructed. It's also known as A Ti Virgencita or Virgencita Ranchera. It may have different names. But one of the charm of it is that it has this wonderful interlude at the beginning, which has a lot of fun. This is a polka. And again, not unlike what I showed you in Las Mañanitas Tapatías, where you have this kind of natural tendency to extend phrases. This expects that. So when the singer gets to this phrase, there's this expectation that the singer will hold it out kind of as long as they can. It's kind of a means to show, bravado vocally. And the mariachi expects that and simply adds measures as needed to accompany, and then when it's ready to come to a close. So just be mindful of that, because it's notated here with a few extra measures included, but that might even be longer, or it could be shorter. I think in its original notation, it was probably only 2 measures, but it's natural in terms of how this style expects it that it would be extended. I'm going to play for you a recording with my friend Pedro Rubalcaba singing this. You'll hear a little bit of the introduction, as well as the guitar strum and the bass pattern that would be done along with this.
presentes un canto valiente que México entero te diga sonriente. Yo quiero decirte lo que tú ya sabes, que México te ama, que nunca está triste, porque de nombrarte el alma se inflama.
Going on.
Tu nombre es orgullo y el mundo lo sabe, eres nuestro orgullo y México es tuyo, tú guardas la llave. Viva la reina de los mexicanos, la que con sus manos sembró rosas bellas y puso en el cielo mirar. Es la estrella.
Introduction. So what a lot of joy to this piece, correct? And wonderfully rendered here. You can hear the joy and infusing of it. It's important to note that a lot of these juncture points also have the opportunity or the potential for being extended. At the end of here, after La Llave, or some of the phrases up there, as well as over here. So just be mindful of that. Like I said, the piece doesn't exist on the page, and do not expect to be tied to the notation of it, because it's really just a transcription of how people know it and have passed it down. Note that this piece is unabashedly Mexican and very proudly, orgullosamente mexicano. But if you wanted to make it a little more universal, I've heard some communities say, instead of de los mexicanos, I've heard que viva la reina de todos los pueblos, as a way of incorporating and making it a little more universal. But it does, as a piece by a Mexican composer, it celebrates, with great honor, the events that took place within that country, the Guadalupe narrative itself. Let's move on, and I want to show you another piece. I think this is a little gem. It's fairly recently written. It's by composer Cuco Chavez. It was written in the 80s, and it's published by GIA. We've had it in our repertoire for many years, and I would say that most people aren't familiar with this. But because of the way it's constructed, it kind of brilliantly resonates with all of the techniques and expectations of the Guadalupe repertoire. It's a fast waltz, and the lyrics are filled with vivid imagery of flowers and song and being effusively devoted to Guadalupe. And the refrain, let's look at what the refrain says. It says, "Viva para siempre la Guadalupana, la Virgen Morena, la del Tepeyac." This is "Long live Guadalupe, the dark-skinned virgin, the one from Tepeyac Hill. She is our happiness, our joy, the sun of this people," the sun as in S-U-N, "señal de justicia, esperanza y amor," the sign of justice, hope, and love. And the refrain is very vibrant. It's in a kind of a moderate 3/4, but it has a lot of energy behind it. This is the refrain. "Viva para siempre la Guadalupana, la Virgen Morena, la del Tepeyac. Ella es la alegría, el sol de este pueblo, señal de justicia, esperanza y amor." So you would use that as your introduction. Time, a run down into the verse. "Me gusta cantarle a la vida, me gusta cantarle al amor." Hear the extension there. "Me gusta cantarle a mi madre de Guadalupe por donde voy. Me gusta cantarle a mi madre de Guadalupe por donde voy. Viva para siempre la Guadalupana, la Virgen Morena, la del Tepeyac. Ella es la alegría, el sol de este pueblo, señal de justicia, esperanza y amor." very nice. What a delight. I hope you'll agree with me that it really is a gem. So even though it's newer, I think it's worthy of being included in the Guadalupe repertoire as one of your staples. I discovered this when I was in Chicago at Holy Cross Community, Holy Cross Church, parish there. And for whatever reason, they kind of latched onto this piece, and it has become one of their staples. And so I'm excited to share with you this piece, and I will be creating a new octavo of this, which has instrumentation and an accompaniment, obviously, but also an English translation. So I think it's a really wonderful text, and it deserves to be shared across various languages. So the English-speaking community will be able to celebrate and use this as well for their honoring of Guadalupe. So Coco Chavez, published by GIA. If you're wondering where to find this, it's been in the WP Missalette for years. So you can find it in Celebremos, and the hymnal, and the quarterly missal, and in the accompaniment versions as well. All right, we were at close to the hour mark, so I'm going to go I want to go about 10 minutes longer. I know that if you have logged on and are watching this and need to go and do other things throughout your day, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to go through just a handful of more pieces, probably about another 10, 15 minutes. So you're always welcome to come back and watch this video and discover the remainder of these pieces. Before we go on to those newer pieces, just a word on Santa Maria del Camino. This is a very, very well-known piece in the Hispanic community, probably as well-known as Pescador de Hombres. And it offers a Marian piece that is a little more universal. It's not Guadalupe specific, it's not Mexican specific, but what it does say is that in the refrain, "Ven con nosotros al caminar, Santa Maria, ven." Please, Mother Mary, come and accompany us on this journey. Come to us. And the one little suggestion I want to give to you is that typically it's sung rather ballad-like and slowed down, and the syncopations that were intended by the composer, Juan Espinosa, are oftentimes smoothed over onto the downbeats, just in kind of a natural practice. Ven con nosotros al caminar, Santa Maria, ven, is how you'll normally hear it sung. So one thing I'm going to encourage you is perhaps infuse some of the rhythm that might have been intended. Juan Espinosa, of course, spent many years in Central America, and a lot of his music is infused with Andino or Andean kind of rhythms, and it has a little bit of a spirit to it. So if you were to play perhaps a calypso rhythm, it helps these syncopations fall right in line. Ven con nosotros a caminar, Santa Maria, ven. Ven con nosotros a caminar, Santa Maria, ven. So just, one of the staples of the Hispanic repertoire, just perhaps a way to revisit it and infuse a little bit more character into it. And I just want to acknowledge this particular piece, copyrighted by OCP, our good friends over in Portland, and thank you for their just acknowledging their ownership of it and their graciousness in allowing us to use it in this workshop and in our resources here at GIA. So thank you, OCP. Now I want to show you two Ave Marias. This first one is by Francisco Palazón. Now, Palazón is a prolific Spaniard composer, contemporary of Cesario Gavarain. And in my estimation, this setting by him of the Ave Maria, which is the Hail Mary, is, I think, one of my most favorite pieces in the entire Hispanic repertoire. Not just the Marian or the Guadalupe repertoire, but all the repertoire. I think this is just a lovely, outstanding, astounding piece. And I'm going to show you actually the assembly version of this, just so you can see how it's constructed. It's in a minor key. It has this wonderful sincerity to it, a little tinge of, longing behind it, which it should. It's our plea, it's our prayer to Mother Mary. Musically, it's constructed in three forms, three sections, each of which is repeated. First intoned by a cantor or a choir, perhaps, and then repeated by all the people, by the assembly. So here's the first section. The second phrase is then intoned and then repeated. And then the third and final phrase is repeated. And by doing so, you pray the entire Hail Mary in Spanish. Now, what I'm going to show you is an arrangement that I've actually published of this very piece. And I've taken the setting by Francisco Palazón, and with wonderful respect to my friends in Portland, they publish and own, they own the copyright on this piece, but it's not available in any resources. It's not in Floricanto, and it's not elsewhere in OCP resources. So I think it's very important that you know it. It's a wonderful setting. And so it has appeared in the WP and the GIE Missalette for several years. And I want to show you this octavo version. Here's the product number if you want to look it up. But in this arrangement, I took the assembly responses and I choralized them, so they're done in SAT harmony. And I've added an accompaniment that I think respects the nature of it. There's in the middle section in particular, which is my favorite section, it's a little bit of a Espanol flair, a flamenco flair in terms of its chords. So it captures a little bit of that essence. And then I added the parts throughout, specifically for trumpet, but it could be played on violins. And in the recording I'm going to show you in just a moment, it's actually played on accordion. So you can hear different interpretations of it. So this is a setting of Palazón's Ave Maria as arranged by su servidor, myself. And this is an arrangement that so you can hear and pray along and see how the sections work. So let's listen to this in its entirety.
Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres, y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús.
A little bit of this next section here. My favorite section.
Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores.
Final section. Just absolutely charming, delightful, soaks into the soul. What a great setting by Palazón, and I hope this an arrangement can even add more opportunity and musical interest to it. But whether you do it simply as a tune, as it is in the accompaniment and the missalette, or you do it with these additional harmonies and musical flares, it's really just a wonderful, solid piece and a beautiful way to pray the actual words of the Hail Mary. I want to acknowledge vocalist Liliana Labrado from here in El Paso on that recording. She did a wonderful job with that. Now, another Ave Maria. Now, this doesn't necessarily use the text of the Hail Mary. It's more of an original text, but it's by our good friend Pedro Rubalcaba, and this is from his album and recording Mi Alma Tiene Sed. Now, on that album, he simply recorded this piece with his solo voice and one guitar, and it's absolutely stunning. You need to check it out. It's on the GIA website. You can you can get that MP3 or download or stream it, however you consume your music. But the piece is so captivating that with his permission, I asked him to do an arrangement of it. And so I took it, his melody, and I retained a lot of the soloistic nature of it, added an accompaniment. But in the later verse, after the refrain, I add in a choral kind of a counter melody to it. It's descant, but it's underneath the voice. And in the refrain, where he goes into the upper parts of the as the melody kind of rises up there, I underpinned the text of the actual Hail Mary, the Ave Maria, in Latin. So you have this wonderful juxtaposition of the choral voices with the solo. And so I just want to have you listen to a little bit of it. Due to time, I'll give you a few excerpts.
Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor está contigo.
I'm going to jump ahead to the refrain.
Tú que siempre has sido mía, ora siempre por nuestras vidas, vidas hoy en este día. Ave María, goza también en mi alegría. Sabemos bien, oh Madre mía, que en el amor se da la vida. Dichosa eres tú por haber creído que se cumpliría la palabra de Dios.
The refrain with Latin text.
Ave María, tú que siempre has sido vida, ora siempre por nuestras vidas, vidas hoy en este día. Ave María, goza también en mi alegría. Sabemos bien, oh Madre mía, que en el amor se da la vida. Ave María, Ave María, Ave
Absolutely stunning, just gorgeous. What a beautiful setting by Pedro Rubalcaba. So do check that out. It's worthy of addition into your repertoire, not only for Guadalupe, but anytime you're celebrating Marian feasts, and especially for weddings, quinceañeras, any other occasions where folks might request the Schubert. You might counter and say, well, you know, I have this other setting that's really beautiful, and it's in Spanish. So it might prove some opportunity for you. So again, this one and the Palazón Octavo, you can check out on the GIA website. They're available in print form. And we've arrived now to the end of our session. So I have just one last piece to show you. And thank you for being with me all this time. And I hope you've enjoyed it. The piece I'm going to show you is by good friend and composer, Tony Alonso. Now, Tony, I'm going to stop here just for a moment so you can see this. Tony just recently released this past year, this Grammy, Latin Grammy nominated recording, Caminemos con Jesus. It's a wonderful collection. It has great contents on it. And it's just a landmark, really a landmark piece in terms of Catholic music. Tony is Cuban American, so he wanted to celebrate his Cuban ethnicity and origins, and celebrate really the styles of the Cuban people. And so the entire collection is conceived and interpreted in Cuban musical styles, specifically what's called the son, the S-O-N, that's the style of music. And within that collection is found this particular piece, which is a litany to the Mother of the Americas. Now, this is a very, very useful piece and one of the reasons I wanted to end with it is because it not only celebrates Guadalupe, but it celebrates all the iterations of Mary as patroness of the various Latin American countries. So Tony's really ingenious construction behind this was to take a piece and by virtue of many phrases and many verses, go through in a litany form, which is true to its form, and name many, as many as possible of Virgin Mary as she is known and celebrated as patronesses of various Latin American countries. So, for example, it starts with Guadalupe. So you have Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. Everyone responds, Rega por nosotros, pray for us, ora pro nobis. You can even sing it in Latin. Cuida tu pueblo mexicano. Take care, watch over your Mexican people. We respond, Rega por nosotros. And then it goes on, Nuestra Señora de Coromoto, cuida tu pueblo venezolano. Watch over the Venezuelan people. Nuestra Señora de Monte Carmelo, watch over the Chilean people. Nuestra Señora de la Paz, watch over the people from El Salvador. And so you can see all these verses and all these countries and peoples named, all the communities named. So it's a great piece to have in your repertoire, not only for Our Lady of Guadalupe, but for other Marian celebrations, especially patronal celebrations throughout the year. So November 19th or September 8th, other dates throughout the year where communities are celebrating their patronal version, their patronal iteration of our mother. So this is a great way to acknowledge her role as mother of all the Americas, which indeed Guadalupe is. So we're going to close with this litany, Letanía a la Madre de las Américas by Tony Alonso from his collection Caminemos con Jesús. Check them all out on the GIA website. Here's the octavo. I love the sabor. Here we go with verse 1. Everyone. Rega por nosotros. 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 Cuida tu pueblo chileno. Rega por nosotros. Nuestra Señora de la Paz. Rega por nosotros. Cuida tu pueblo salvadoreño. Rega por nosotros. The refrain. Ruega por nosotros. Ruega por nosotros. Ruega por nosotros. Rega por nosotros. Ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén. And it goes on into the various verses. So you can see how the refrain is constructed. It simply says, pray for us, rega por nosotros, twice, and then ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte, now and at the hour of our death, amen, the words from the Hail Mary itself. So a wonderful addition to the repertoire. This is part of a landmark collection. Do go and explore all of the offerings in Caminemos con Jesús. It's just a marvelous collection, and you get a sense of just the wonderful, rich musical treatment in all the arrangements. So our time has come to an end. I want to again thank you for being accompanying me on this little musical tour of Guadalupe. Guadalupe remains so special, and whether you're celebrating it, in full force or in reduced capacity or at home virtually, Guadalupe is really a celebration that is dear to the heart for so many. So I join you in marking just how much and how meaningful Guadalupe is for us. So, Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe, ruega por nosotros. Thank you again. Special thanks to GIA Publications for this webinar. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I could spend hours doing this, exploring the repertoire. There's so much more even beyond this, but this was just a little taste of it. So for your plannings this year or in future years, however your celebrations manifest themselves, I hope you found some good insight, pastoral wisdom, and ultimately really good repertoire to be able to use for your celebrations of Guadalupe. Have a joyful and blessed remainder of Advent. A very Merry Christmas to you and yours. God bless you all. Thanks. Bye-bye.